If you want to know how the Lauten 208 compares to the Lauten Clarion, stick around, because we're going to be talking about these two mics quite a bit.
From the mind of Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov.
So the Clarion from Lauten Audio is absolutely one of the best mics I've ever heard, and thank you Lauten Audio for sending this over with no obligation to review it. This isn't quite my review yet. I'm still going through all of the things I need to learn about this mic before I'm ready to give a full review, and part of that is answering the question, how does it sound compared to the Lauten 208? Let me show you. So, this is the Clarion, and this is the 208. And the 208 is set the way I normally use it, which is with the 50 Hz high-pass filter on and the low-pass filter off. So it's pretty much wide open up to 15K. And this 50 Hz high-pass filter gives it just a nice little bit of low-end presence, without it being too much, I really think. And I like it a lot. So this is normally the sound I use a lot when I'm working with the 208. And then back here the Clarion. And what you hear is a much tighter sound. They do exist in the same tonal family. I do believe there's a Lauten family sound. And it's very much centered around this clarity. And a good deal of that has to do with not only the premium build of these components and the fact that they make their own capsules, but the fact that these mics, right, they're all using really clean FETs. So they're using K170s, which as opposed to the FET that's in a U87, a 2N3819. I know it's really nerdy stuff, but the difference is the FET in an 87 is a little bit smeary. It has that tone. It has that kind of that vintagey tone, which is really kind of a little bit of a smear. Overall, let's be honest. But the K170 is much more clear, it's much more transparent, has a lot more detail. And you have to remember too that the 2N3819 was developed in the era of tape. So that smeary sound, that vintagey sound, it wasn't really as noticeable in the era of tape as it is when you recorded digital. So overall, I do think that the 208 here in this setting has a very similar sound to the Clarion. There's a tonal resemblance, but it's not exactly the same. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the filter off completely. So this is it wide open with no 50 Hertz, with no high pass filter at all. And it sounds hold on. It sounds like a dynamic mic. It has that RE20 kind of sound to it. And then compared to the Clarion, right? I mean, this definitely has a much different sound. So, the 208 with its tonal variations is quite a recording tool. Now, let me switch this. All right, so this is the setting that I've been using for like character voice stuff on the 208. And this is with the high pass filter set at 120. And some of you may think 120 is way too high to high pass filter. But the reason you do that is so you get this really great mid pop. Now here, again on the Clarion has no filters built into it at all. So the sound of the Clarion, right, you may think, oh, well, the Clarion has one sound. But this is just the cardioid sound without the, we haven't even explored what there's a switch here on this side. You can see the pattern switch there, but there's a similar switch on the other side that will give you a 10 dB pad, a 10 dB boost, and set it at normal zero gain. Now I have it at normal zero gain. And when you put the mic in the pad or the boost, it will affect the sound overall because it's really affecting how much gain you need from your preamp. So we're going to explore that soon. But overall, this one sound that the Clarion does in its default setting, and I'm saying cardioid with no boost or no cut, I love this sound. I really do. And again, here we go back to this, and it does sound a little bit more anemic next to that. But again, a lot of work that I do, it's really focused on the mid-range, not so much that low end. Now here we're going to do one more thing. We're going to put it up to 50, and then we're going to take that 10 Hertz low-pass filter, 10K Hertz, sorry. And then we're going to compare it to this. So, obviously you have the Clarion, which rolls off above 10K. When you compare it to this, which sounds more of like a dynamic. So let's go back to my favorite default setting. So here we go. And one thing about this default setting too is that I have the low cut going into the MT-48 set at 60 hertz. If I set it at 80, right? If I take a little bit of that low, a little bit of that, there's too much low end, I think, on that. So if I run it at 80, even with the 50 hertz on here, right? So if I run it at 80 and I go back here, we get more of a similar sound, but this definitely feels a lot more tighter overall. I think overall, when you talk into the Clarion, you get a little bit more detail. You get a little bit more nuanced detail than you do here with the 208. I think the 208 just has a great sound, but it's not as detailed overall. It's a detailed sound, but it's a lot more detailed than a lot of other mics I've used. But, you know, it's not the same as the Clarion. It's not the same as the Clarion, where I feel like you're getting a little bit more resolution, a higher resolution capture, especially through those mids. Especially I can hear it on the resonance here. You can just hear more depth. You can hear like deeper into that sawtooth wave when I do that. So overall, right? How do they compare? They're pretty close in a lot of ways, and I do think that you could, and this is my plan now. I've been using the Clarion on everything, and so I'm not, keeping them both in the booth is a luxury. So what I'm thinking I might do is I might take the 208 out and put it in my office so that I can do stuff in there. I can take it with me, and I can have something that has that Lauten family sound that I can carry with me. I don't have to keep it in the booth all the time. So I think that using the 208 more as my out of the booth mic gives me something that allows me to get closer to my in booth sound if I'm using the Clarion for everything. And quite honestly, I have been. So, you may say that, you may like the 208 better. I love the 208. I love this sound. But again, overall, I just feel like there's more detail in the Clarion sound. It may not be as evident through a phone speaker or through a more, standard generic level consumer grade listening device, which, it's really all about what the end consumer experiences. But overall, I do think that there's a little bit less detail in general. Now, is it worth spending up to get the Clarion? This is the one thing the Clarion does that the 208 doesn't. This figure eight sound that in the previous video that I posted really has a close sonic relationship with the U87 sound. This figure eight sound, to me, is like such a great storytelling tone. I really love how lush this is. I love how big this is. And compared to this, right, this seems a lot more anemic. Now, even if let's drop it out of that. Even if I open it all up like I did before. So it's like we have no high pass filter, no low pass filter. It sounds a little bit more, again, like a dynamic mic. If I, again, like wide open on the bottom with the 10K on, it sounds a lot like a dynamic mic. But, like this, it sounds a little bit more open, like an EQ dynamic mic. It's a different sound than this on the Clarion in figure eight. Now, the addition of how it sounds on figure eight, the fact that it does sound similar to a U87, the fact that it does sound really big and lush, and it has the characteristics of something that you could use for an audiobook, for storytelling in general, for something that I think is very pleasing, round and pleasing to the ear. The Clarion in figure eight is amazing. Now let's go back to Cardioid. Now, this in Cardioid, this is a really great punchy mic. It has been amazing on commercials. It has been amazing on auditions. I am so pleased with the Clarion. Clarion, that I honestly think I might be able to get away with doing all the work that I do with this mic alone. I don't have to switch to a different mic to do like a promo thing because the detail in this thing cuts so great. And the detail in it, when I'm doing a commercial, when I'm talking, is like it's perfect because it really makes the voice pop without it being obnoxious, without it being like so in your face. Now let's go back to here. Let me switch this back to the position here with the 50 hertz high pass filter. Do I have the, hold on. All right, there we go. So this is the setting on the 208 that we started with the 50 hertz high pass filter on and the low pass filter off. And, you know, the tonal variations on the 208 and the fact that it does reject off axis so well makes this such a killer mic. And just the way this sounds, I think this is a premium, I think it really is. You have to consider a premium sonic upgrade from the 208. It's cleaner, it's more detailed, and, you know, if you want that kind of thing, which I think is important for voiceover, it's a consideration. Now, what is incredible about this is the thing, ultimately what it comes down to, and I know these mics are not inexpensive. I know they're not something you just run out and pick up on a whim. But when you think about what the Clarion is capable of, when you think about how great it sounds, how modern it sounds, yet it doesn't sound like clinical and like it doesn't hurt your ears when you talk into it. It sounds amazing. I think it sounds amazing. When you think about the cost of this mic, and I found out all the Lauten mics are on sale this month, October 2024. So that's pretty good. So when you consider the cost of this mic and the cost of the 208, right? The 208 is generally about half of what the Clarion costs, give or take, but it's in ballpark-ish, right? So it's about half the price. But when you consider when you consider what the alternatives are, when you consider the fact that you could buy this and this for half of the price of what it would cost to get a U87, I mean, it's ridiculous. That is just absolutely ridiculous. And again, I mean, the 208 has been amazing. Like the month and a half or so I've been using it for work. Let's say I have a lot of positive results thanks to the 208. I'm very pleased with it. And the Clarion so far, I've been using it on stuff and quite honestly, it's blowing my mind. So, you know, my good buddy Nate over at the over at the Time Preservation Society, he referred to these mics, the Lauten mics, as the best mics in the world. Now, at first I was like, yeah, okay, right? But quite honestly, after using these two mics, and I've only just tried these two mics, I'm beginning to think that he's right. I'm beginning to think that he's 100% right. Because these mics are they're amazing. They're so well built. They sound incredible. And they're not going to blow up your wallet the way that some of the Neumanns will. You know, the good ones, not the crap Neumanns, not the affordable Neumanns that really don't sound as good as the premium offerings. This is a premium offering from Lauten. That's what blows my mind, is that if I had known about these mics long before I probably would have bought them sooner and not even worried about buying a Neumann, to tell you the truth. But they're here now, and I'm very pleased. So once again, here's the 208 from Lauten Audio, and here is the Clarion. And again, I think that the characteristic about these mics that really strikes me the most is that it sounds like the best version of me that I've ever heard. So, you know, again, I'm going to stick with the tagline, with the description that I gave a couple of videos back. Authentically you, better than ever. I couldn't agree more. I think that really, to me, embodies what these mics sound like. The Lauten family sound so far is just incredible. So here it is, Clarion 208. What do you think? All right, let me know in the comments. Until next time, this is Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov, fading to black.